Good
Okay,
morning. Good morning. Good morning, Cynthia.
good
And
morning.
good morning to our LinkedIn Live followers. If you're joining us live, welcome. We're excited to be here with you for Thursdays with Culture Talk. I am Theresa Agresta, one of the co-founders at Culture Talk. And as always, I'm joined by my lovely business partner and my sister, Cynthia Forstmann. Hey, what was that? You have two fingers taped together?
I had a rollerblading incident
Oh, no.
for another time.
Okay. Well, good morning and thank you for being here with us. We are here today to kick off the fourth, right? This is our fourth critical
Uh,
path.
yes, this is
Yeah,
fourth critical path.
right. So at Culture Talk, we go to market around these critical paths that enable businesses and organizations to tap into the power of their culture and to really utilize what we call these story patterns and these archetypes to improve operations on a number of different topics. So we're on our fourth critical path, the ways in which you can deploy this kind of work and really drive real ROI and distinct benefits for your organization when you've got the power of these archetype patterns. So that's what we do here at Culture Talk. Today's topic is how do you use the stories and the patterns to drive team development? So we're going to dive into that. And the next 2 months are going to be about this team development path. And we want to share and bring some experts to the table to help us lead this conversation. But before I do that, I want to just share with you a little bit about Culture Talk. Culture Talk is a system that enables organizations to take this intangible, hard to define topic of culture and give it some handles and enable organizations to really begin to diagnose, measure, and be able to manage and shift that culture so that it can be used to really positive effect. We've got 2 assessments that are the foundation of the Culture Talk platform. And we have an international network of trained practitioners who bring these tools to organizations. So we'll tell you more about the network and opportunities that you can have to interact with them. But I just wanted to kick us off with that little starter on Culture Talk. And did I miss anything, Cynthia? Anything?
Yeah, I would just add, you mentioned archetypes, and I think that there are, when we think about culture and like ways of looking at culture, the Culture Talk system, it has a framework that, as Theresa said, creates these handles that give us a really tangible way for talking about culture. And we've also built a lot of different methodologies for how do you debate the culture specifically. So today, as Theresa mentioned, we're on critical path for team development. We're going to be talking about how can you activate this thinking, these tools to really leverage the success of teams, both within a team as well as between teams, right? Because when we talk about team development, we have a saying here where we talk about the fact that individuals and organizations or team systems are inextricably intertwined. And so, it's it takes both, right? It takes both sides of that equations, understanding who we are as individuals and how we function successfully within a team, as well as on the other side, how do different teams function together in an organization in order to move that organization and its strategy forward.
Right. And how do you get out of, when you think about those teams functioning together, how do you get out of that us versus them mentality? Yeah. Quickly move past, what are some pretty typical roadblocks that organizations face when 2 teams are tasked with coming together and working together.
Yeah. Right, because I think whether you are an individual on a team or you're on a team and your team is struggling with another team, like your success can be totally thwarted. You could bring, the same skills, the same strengths, the same drive to get something done on one team versus another team. But like that dynamic has to work successfully. It's almost like it's its own culture as well. So we were talking earlier, Theresa, about the fact that like as individuals and teammates, we need to be a little dynamic. We need to learn how who I am is going to work on this team versus that team, and how I might need to shift and know myself well enough to shift my energy and show up in different ways to be successful with different teams.
Right. Absolutely. Not just counting on what I did in the past to move me into future challenges. And that, I think, is one of the biggest things that leaders today and HR teams today, bringing people together, are aware of, is that soft skill of being able to be adaptable, flexible, recognize, not only what I bring to the table and the ways in which I add, positive and maybe some positive things and maybe some challenges onto that team dynamic, but to be able to read the room and understand, how do I recognize in my colleagues kind of what's driving them, what's motivating them? How do I approach people in a way that increases collaboration, shortcuts conflict, and enables people to really bring their best self to solve the challenges or to really pursue the opportunities, which will make the whole team successful. One of the things that, I'm really aware of, and we've seen this repeatedly when we have a new leader, and the opportunity to essentially onboard that leader. So there's no role that's more impactful when bringing a new person onto a team than that of onboarding a new leader. And, sometimes the whole culture of the team might start to shift and change as a result of that leader coming on board.
Or that leader like doesn't know what they're getting. Like they've just gotten a promotion, they've just gotten brought in, and it's like, ooh, what am I getting that already exists in terms of the culture here?
Yeah, exactly. So one of the ways in which we've seen the archetype patterns of culture talk play out really well when you're bringing a new leader on board is to almost hand them the gift of, this is the makeup of your team. And so not only are you going to leapfrog that, 6 months to 1 year process of figuring it out for yourself and, maybe overcoming all of the little resistance that might be there to the new leadership for whatever reason, or the holding on to, this is the way we've always done things. So being able to really look at the team as a whole and visualize that through the outcomes of individual culture talk assessments is one way in which leaders coming onto a team can really get their hands on and get those handles quickly to understand what's the makeup of this team and what ears do I need to use to listen to the human beings, and what opportunities do I see in the mix of these people who might, be able to tap into some strengths in new ways and to add value to projects or, overcome challenges because of their own personal motivations, if you will. I was going to pull up a grid here, Cynthia. Give me a moment because I got to find it.
Do that. You're gonna pull up a grid, but while you're doing that, let's just describe kind of the foundation of the work.
Sure. Good idea.
When you're doing culture talk for individuals within a team, Theresa mentioned culture talk for individuals, which is one of our assessments. It measures an individual's archetypes or story patterns. It gives them their results across 12 patterns. So we're all a unique mix of these patterns. But we offer through our partner network a validation workshop experience, which is sort of a foundational offering that if you want to bring this work into your team, if you run a validation workshop, that allows every person on the team not just to take the assessment, but to try it on and to look at themselves in terms of how they scored and to really relate to the patterns and be able to send back the information that says, this is how these patterns show up in my life experience. Here's the ways these patterns have come together uniquely as me in my life. And I think there's a big advantage to that as a methodology, in that we never have someone take an assessment that they feel like they've been typed or they've been put into a box, right? And so hero, like, am I a hero? Am I a magician? Am I a caregiver, an explorer? Those are some of the patterns. But, people, human beings don't want a label slapped on them. What we're giving them instead is an invitation to go, oh, how are those 3 or 4 patterns really showing up for you? So in that validation workshop, I mean, it's an incredible team experience. It's a team culture builder just to watch a team go through a validation workshop. Theresa, I feel like you want to say something about that.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I mean, I think that one of the, just feedbacks that we hear when people go out and deliver this work on repeat is, it was easy. Mm-hmm. It was incredibly well received. It was a tremendous experience. So we know that even out of that initial validation experience that Cynthia is describing, there's incredible value for the team. Two of the really fun comments that I always lean back into are one leader who said, we were a team on paper, and after this initial experience, we've become a team on purpose. Mm. And the other one was a person who came out of the experience and said, I learned more about my colleagues in the last 4 hours than I have over the last 4 years. And so that experience of being able to open the door to relationship, to understanding, to, opportunity to work better together and to, learn things about each other that will enable us to just catapult the team results.
I want to comment on that. It's the archetypes create this instant safety. There is something about telling the story of who you are through story patterns that enable people to show up fully and authentically, often sharing things about their life experience, as Theresa mentioned, that people didn't know, right? That ability to feel safe enough to get a little bit more vulnerable and to get to know each other a little on a deeper level, that is the magic of this foundational validation workshop. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm going to share the outcome. I'm going to pull this up, so continue talking.
But on that foundation, right? We are now safe to show up and say who I am, what's happened to me in my life, what's impacted my view of the world, etc. What do I struggle with? Even all of those things are coming out through a story pattern where there's this safety in being able to say, I have these several patterns, and here's the good, the bad, and the ugly around that in terms of how I've experienced it. And that safety at the end of the day really starts to make this whole team dynamic stronger. So carry on, Theresa, on the grid.
Sure, right. And here's a brief look at the results of a team. So imagine that new leader being onboarded, or even a new hire who's joining this team and is able to understand their team and their teammates with this kind of clarity. Being able to understand just at a glance that we've got a lot of heroes on this team. What does that mean? What do these individuals thrive on? How do they operate? What will help them to feel really rewarded? What kind of assignments will they be well suited to carry out? We also see on this team a lot of sages, right? So we've got 2 of these story patterns and energies that are present. But we also see some holes. Maybe this team needs to initiate some change. This leader is going to have to look for ways in which this group can tap into their strengths to create change, but she's he or she is not going to look to the revolutionary. That might be one of the change opportunities or patterns we would look to. So they'll have to do it a different way. So there's actually quite a bit of intelligence that's embedded into understanding how each of the players show up, but also what is the overall makeup of the team, and how are they going to potentially respond to opportunities, challenges, changes, or requests that come down the pike. So I'll pull that down. I just wanted to give us a quick visual there, because I think a picture speaks 1,000 words. And oftentimes when that visual is presented to a leader or to a team, they'll start to say things like, wow, that makes so much sense. So there's that individual wow, and then there's a step back. There is the opportunity to take a look at the collective.
Yeah.
On the team.
Yeah, it's also an interesting way where I know we're not going to dive too deeply into diversity today, but just thinking of that snapshot, we start to think about diversity through a different lens, like diversity of story, like what are our unique energies and stories that are different or that are aligned, and how do those energies play together? So I'll shift into another topic here in terms of when you do that foundational experience with a team, that CultureTalk for individuals work. Another thing that you could layer onto that is some kind of experience around understanding conflict on the team. So Theresa showed us the grid with 12 patterns across it. We saw some heroes, we saw some caregivers, explorers, magicians. And as you might imagine, people with different energies, sometimes they get along famously and they understand, how they should come together and collaborate. But also we know that in each of those story patterns between them, there's this natural tension that exists between patterns. I'll use two to describe this. The magician, there were a little bit of magician on that team, a few people that had high in a magician pattern. That's a pattern that's about transformation, being able to see possibility and potential, being able to look into the future and hold the vision for how we get there. And I'll compare that to another pattern called the ruler pattern. And I think there was just one ruler persona.
There was one ruler, right? The lonely ruler on the team.
And the ruler pattern is much more about stability, right? So you can hear that just in that one word. One pattern is about change and transformation. One pattern is about stability. That ruler can also have a really clear vision, but they are much more present moment focused in terms of what are the parts and pieces that need to be happening today, and how are we going to move the ball forward step by step in a really orchestrated fashion. Both have strengths, both of those patterns have strengths, but when those two come together, you can sort of feel the natural conflict is that one's got their eye way down there making a bold leap, and the other one's like, how are we going to get there step by step? How are we going to move the tectonic, so to speak?
Right. Right. When you know those things about two individuals on a team, you can hear their day-to-day interactions differently. You can look for the places that they're going to add the most value, where we need to, in sort of activate those opportunities on the team. So there's lots of ways, again, that leader coming in, and even the rest of the team can say, wow, yes, that makes sense. Yes, that's going to be, going to drive us further, faster, and sort of let go of objections, maybe to what's seen as a plum assignment, or and really be able to embrace what's going to make you shine as an individual on the team as well. I can see that we had a question come through. I think you got it too. The question in the chat here, you mentioned being adaptable and flexible as key qualities. What do you suggest to someone who is experiencing frequent changes in leadership? Example, 3 times in 3 years. That's a lot. And needing to sustain these qualities and skills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great question, and it happens. And I think, every time there's a new leader, there is new energy. It's like every time there's a new person in the mix, whether you're in a small team or a larger team, the whole energy of the team shifts with that additional new energy. And, I think that one way you can use your own archetype patterns to understand like how to shift with a changing dynamic, because it's a soft skill, right? To know yourself, to know what those strengths and motivations are. But for example, we're never all of one pattern and none of another. So my top 3 patterns are creator, lover, and caregiver. And I may, in certain situations with certain leaders, with certain people I'm working with, be more successful by leaning into one of those patterns more than another one of those patterns. Or I may be more successful if I recognize the tension between, let's just say it's the creator, the tension. Let's say I have a ruler leader, or ruler and creator are 2 that Theresa and I have that sometimes knock heads a little bit, because Theresa has a high ruler. How are she and I, like, what are our tendencies with creator and ruler? So I can start to go, what does Theresa need? What does the other leader bring to the table? And what are they looking for? What are they naturally motivated for? And what's the best way I can flex my archetypal muscle or energy to be successful in that connection?
Yeah, I like this, visual of being able to flex the muscle as opposed to what might be happening in a situation like that, which is to sort of feel like you're hitting your head against the wall. Like, here we are again, and I'm going to bring my best self. Boom, I bump into the wall. And so being able to not only, know yourself, I think another huge component that could be helpful in that situation is to be able to communicate to that new leader, hey, I show up in these ways. Here are the patterns that, are on repeat in my world. Here are the strengths that I bring because of those. How can you best utilize those strengths? As well as being able to recognize, I got to tone this down for right now, but you understand why. Or understanding the patterns of the new leader that came in. I got to phrase this differently. I've got to approach it differently. So if I want to lean into who I am and bring my best self to this situation, I'm going to have to be a little bit patient. And again, choose not to hit my head against the wall. Choose to see what's happening. Use the framework and the language of the framework to communicate. That's another great example of the system having handles. So I don't have to sit back and be frustrated and complain about you behind your back, new leader. I have the opportunity to say, hey, my creator is really good at doing these things, and I think it adds value. How can I support you?
These patterns sort of naturally help people create some emotional intelligence. I love that you said, like, knock your head against the wall. It's so naive for any of us to think that I can show up the same way again and again and again with every person, because we do naturally flex in our own life. We might talk to our mother different than our kids, different than our spouse, right? We kind of have this natural flex. And that's a skill that we can develop. And archetypes give us a framework for looking at it and talking about what's not working and where's more specifically, and how more specifically might I shift in my communications to something more effective.
Right. And to support that, the CultureTalk system offers an enormous amount of resources behind the scenes. Our practitioners and the people in the network have access to I would say, reams of material to support that shift, coaching materials, and personal and development materials, personal branding development materials, an opportunity to, we've talked a lot about the individual survey and that team coming together. And in another, over the course of these next few weeks, as we continue on the team development, we can talk about how looking at the organizational, sort of the culture of the group, the culture of the team, using the organizational work, also adds a layer of understanding into how this team functions. And, what are those patterns they slip into on repeat that work for them, but also drag them down. So many different things.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a, the archetypes are simple. but we can, they can create an incredible amount of impact because, as Theresa's referencing here, we can keep pulling them back out again and again to understand all kinds of different things about ourselves as individuals, as teams, as organizations. So it's kind of a gift that keeps giving, that we can.
And the more adept that you get with them, the quicker that reference becomes. And so teams who have embedded CultureTalk into their system, they use the language. They pull it up. It creates a shortcut. It creates quick understanding, and conflicts just kind of can dissolve. It's not that they don't show up, but the ability to dissipate quickly, communicate effectively, and move on to the good stuff.
Yeah, like getting the job done, getting the strategy forward. Yeah. Well, let's close here with the thought that we run certification classes. We actually certified learning and development teams, in-house teams. So if you're in a team and you want to bring this into your organization, reach out. We haven't announced our next certification class yet. It's coming sometime in September. We also, as Theresa mentioned, have a whole practitioner network around the world of people that can bring these tools to bear. So if you want to maybe think about trying that foundational validation workshop experience with your organization, drop us a note, reach out. We can either talk to you about certification or connect you with one of our partner, it's someone in our community that can bring this work into your world.
Awesome. Well, good to see everybody here today. Thanks for joining us. And we'll look forward to talking to you next time on Thursdays with CultureTalk.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.